So you mentioned a couple people I want to talk to you more about, Johnny Cash and Pope Francis. Let's start
Hmm.
with Johnny Cash. I like that Walk the Line reference. Interesting guy, of course. I mean, I love his music, and but there's a Johnny Cash who was like in the Billy Graham Crusades,
Uh-huh.
and the guy saved it in Nickajack Cave.
Yeah.
And then there's the other, Johnny Cash, who's the, little more rowdy. And maybe that makes him like an interesting person to study, and maybe it's a great example for Christians. But when you think of Johnny Cash, are you just a music fan, or do you sort of look into his life and for inspiration as well?
Well, both. I think his music is fantastic, but I also think that there's a reason why Johnny Cash resonated across the generations, is because he always presented himself as a sinner who was in need of mercy and in need of grace. And the way that he was different is that he wasn't, on the one hand, somebody who was seeking to glorify his rebellion or his sin. He never did that. On the other hand, he wasn't the sappy, sentimental sort of Christian testimony that we so often see. I mean, I think one of the most dangerous things in evangelicalism is the way that sometimes we do testimonies that we think are going to be encouraging to people. We have someone stand up and say, I was a drunk, and then I came to Christ, and I've never wanted another drink since. My life has just been happy and shiny." That isn't the sort of Christian life that the New Testament talks about. And Cash came in with this sense of great hurt, a sense of a past that he was carrying with him, the whole Man in Black sort of mythology that was there, that I think resonated with people to say the love of God extends to you. I think there's a tendency for many people in our culture to assume that the gospel is addressing a certain sort of person who has everything put together and is just the kind of person who is likely to follow Jesus. Cash demolished that by coming in and presenting himself as someone who had much to regret, and therefore much to embrace in terms of
Yeah.
mercy and forgiveness. I think there was an authentic ring to that
It's good
that
art.
is
It's
missing.
good art too. I mean, I've said many times until recently, Christian music was really, really bad overall. And I think
Yeah.
part of the reason was it was like almost too optimistic or too positive. I
Yes.
mean, there's a reason why the blues is soulful and why the human condition, people can identify with it.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I think
Yeah.
bands like U2 and Johnny Cash were able to walk that line about sort of
Yeah.
preaching the gospel a little bit and making it appealing.
I had a friend one time who was a conservative evangelical, and she had suffered a miscarriage. And she was talking to us because she knew that my wife and I had suffered several miscarriages in our family. And she said, "I'm not going to my church this Sunday. I'm going to," and she mentioned this mainline Episcopal church in her community. And I said, "Why?" She said, "Oh, I'm just going this Sunday." She said, "I just couldn't go to my church this Sunday because with the grief that I'm experiencing, I just couldn't handle the hilarity of it all."
Hmm.
And I thought that was very perceptive, that there's something about some of the things we do in evangelical worship that don't give range to lament, to grief, to regret, that the Psalms do. And I think Johnny Cash was able to give vent to. Think of his version of Nine Inch Nails' "Hurt,"
Yeah.
which exact same lyrics, but totally different song in the way that he's singing it. He's singing it as a penitent sinner, and I think that resonates.